interested in the question of how changes in the media environment have affected people's experience with and relationship to music. And the big story with that in the last decade or so has been the emergence of streaming, right? And the effect of having everything available immediately. But one thing that's really characterized my own experience, again, in the last 10 years or so, has been the prevalence of box sets, right? And obviously the box set in some form has basically existed as long as physical music has existed as a product. But it really does seem in the last 10 years or so like, every band of any significance has several box sets. Every album of any significance at all has the kind of stereotypical super deluxe version with 6 or 8 discs. And if you're watching this video, you're probably aware enough of that phenomenon that I don't really need to do anything to convince you that it exists. But I wanted to talk just a little bit about the kind of changes that that's made to the collecting experience, how, on the one hand, the ease and economy in acquiring large portions of music has been really exciting. And then on the other hand, how it sometimes feels like, you've charged yourself with swallowing a steak the size of your own head. As always, I'm Hans from Electric Brain, Electric Shadow. We are a contemporary art rock project. We've never released a box set at the rate we're going. We probably never will, but you can find us on Bandcamp or your preferred streaming platform. Just so you're aware, I do have a friend in my lap here right now. He's very fond of boxes himself, so he wanted to join me for this episode. If it looks like I'm doing something odd with my right arm, don't worry, it's just the cat. So for me, the really characteristic experience of box set collecting has been taking a deep dive by spending at least a couple $100 on a complete catalog box set by an artist I've heard maybe 1 or 2 songs of, or in some cases, nothing at all. And this, for me, is almost an act of bravado, right? It's a way of kind of challenging yourself, showing off, establishing in almost kind of a macho way what a dedicated and attentive listener you are. Now, showing off to whom, I don't know, because I don't really think anybody other than me is particularly impressed by this behavior. But there's a certain kind of identity statement involved in spending $200 on a big Henry Cow box set when you've heard maybe one Henry Cow album a couple times and didn't really feel like you understood it. There's a certain thrill that comes with the challenge of having to say to yourself, okay, I am now going to appreciate Henry Cow because I've spent $200 on this thing, and I've made a $200 bet on my own ability to do so. This is particularly wonderful for somewhat obscure artists with smaller catalogs where you can get the whole thing for $35. That way, you've put in enough money that you're going to give it a good listen, but if it turns out to not be that good, you can absorb that cost. So in 5 minutes, I could go from not even knowing that a prog band named Froop exists to having everything they put out. And, for me, that's about as good as it gets. Of course, the downside risk is that sometimes you end up paying a whole bunch of money for a lot of music that you don't really like at all. I knew that the band Kayak had a great reputation and a huge catalog, so it seemed like paying $250 for this giant Kayak box set was a slam dunk. And don't get me wrong, the first 5 albums are brilliant. But suffice to say that after Edward Riekers takes over on vocals, I like him a bit less. And the stuff after the reunion in 2000, frankly, I don't know if there's even a single song of that I'd go out of my way to listen to again. And I do admire that Scherpenzeel has been able to make all these these big, ambitious concept albums, but they're really not for me. So in this case, bravado got me in over my head, and, I ended up spending $250 to force myself to sit through endless double concept albums about Merlin and Cleopatra. And I kind of wonder if the psychology of this urge is connected to the practice of using torrents to download whole discographies, which is a thing that pretty much everybody I knew was doing from maybe 2008 to 2013. You know, it's one of those things where it's kind of like wife swapping in the 70s, where everybody was doing it. Nobody admits now that they did it. But there's a very particular feeling that you get when you decide that you're going to check out Camel, and then an hour later, you've got 13 Camel albums sitting on your computer. You're trying to figure out where to even start. I have a friend who would ask me about bands that I liked, and then he would torrent their whole catalog and inevitably would start listening in the wrong place. So, he would download every Nick Cave album and then start with The Boatman's Call because that came first alphabetically and get totally the wrong idea about Nick Cave. Or he would download the Arcade Fire catalog. He'd listen to the self-titled EP because it came first chronologically. He would think, yeah, this is fine, but I don't really get why this band is a big deal. And I do personally have some fond memories of that sense of like thrill and trepidation that you would get from downloading a band's whole catalog and, knowing that you've set yourself the chore of mainlining this 13, 14, 15 album stack, some of which might turn out to be your favorite stuff ever. And buying a box set cold, that was a way of getting that same kind of thrill, but this time it was a legal high. And if anything, a lot of the excitement was amplified because, you've sunk a pretty decent part of your paycheck into this. Now, I don't really do this too much anymore, partly because I've finally given in to streaming enough that I'm a bit more inclined to check out a certain amount of an artist's best stuff before I go out and buy everything of theirs in one fell swoop. Also, frankly, there just aren't that many artists left that have this kind of whole catalog box set sitting around that I don't already know. But I do have some great memories associated with, the particular feeling of knowing, okay, I just blew a pretty significant part of my disposable income for this month on 21 discs of Golden Earring, right? I've only ever heard 2 Golden Earring songs in my life. All right, so that's it for part 1. Next week, I'm going to put up another Genesis song ranked video, and then 2 weeks from now, I'll conclude this video. So, fuck. Thanks much, everybody, for your time, and I'll see you around. Bye from me and Archie.